So today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just looking at history, we're looking at the recipe for how you tell these epic historical stories on screen. We're going to go behind the scenes and actually deconstruct the blueprint filmmakers use to make the past feel alive.
Okay, so let's just start with the big question, right? How do you build an empire on screen? I mean, think about it. How do you possibly take centuries of war and politics and culture and squeeze all of that into a story that actually makes sense and, keeps you on the edge of your seat? It's a huge challenge. Translating these big abstract ideas like power into something you can actually see and feel. Well, the tool for that job is something called a visual script, and you should really just think of it as an architect's blueprint, but for a documentary. And our source material for this whole deep dive, it's one of these very scripts, a set of instructions for a film about the rise of empires. So let's break it down piece by piece.
So here's the game plan. We're going to break this recipe down into 4 key ingredients. We'll start with the core subject, then look at the visual elements they use, the atmospheric tone they're trying to create, and finally, the narrative guide that holds it all together.
First up, visualizing imperial power. This is maybe the biggest job of the whole script. How do you take these huge abstract concepts, like say territorial expansion or strategic genius, and make them tangible, make them something we can actually see?
And to pull this off, the script lays out a very specific visual toolkit. We're talking animated maps that show an empire growing over time, illustrations to give a face to the kings and armies and cities, and get this, strategic battle visuals that are intentionally nonviolent. And this is where it gets really clever. An animated map, it's so much more than just a map, right? When you watch that color just spread across the land, it communicates this incredible sense of momentum, of relentless growth. It turns a boring list of conquered places into a dynamic story of unstoppable expansion. And this is such a brilliant move. Instead of just showing us a bunch of bloody fighting, the script says, let's show it like a giant chessboard from above. By focusing on troop movements, the whole story gets elevated. It's not about brute force anymore. It's about intellect. It's about planning and grand strategy. It makes the empire's leaders look like brilliant tacticians, not just simple warlords.
Okay, so we've got the visuals down. But what about the feel of the whole thing? The mood? A really great documentary doesn't just show you what happened, it tells you how to feel about it. And it does that with color and sound.
I love this line straight from the script. Use warm golden tones mixed with dark cinematic style. Let's just unpack that because it's so smart. Warm golden tones, that's your classic golden age, right? It screams wealth, achievement, glory. But then you mix in that dark cinematic style, and suddenly it has weight, it has drama. The gold tells us it's magnificent, but the darkness tells us it's serious business. And of course, you can't set a mood without music. The script is super specific here. The music has to be grand, motivational, and historical. This is the part that tells your heart what to feel. Grand tells us these events are important, they're epic. And motivational, well, that gets you rooting for the empire, making their rise feel heroic, almost like it was meant to be. Okay, so we've got what it looks like and what it feels like. But with centuries of history, how do you keep the viewer from just getting totally lost? That brings us to our next ingredient, guiding the narrative and making sure everything is crystal clear.
And this is where the narrator comes in. The script calls for a professional and clear voice for a reason. This person is your trusted guide through all the chaos. They're the glue holding the visuals and the timeline together, making sure you understand the context and why what you're seeing actually matters.
And to make the narrator's job and our lives way easier, the script calls for graphics like this timeline. This is absolutely crucial. It takes this huge, messy history and boils it down into a simple, clean sequence. You can literally see the journey, from the initial spark of the founding into the boom of expansion and finally reaching that peak, the Golden Age. It just gives the whole story a structure we can easily follow. All right, let's zoom out and look at the big picture. When you mix all these ingredients together, the visuals, the tone, the narration, you don't just get a documentary. You get a powerful, carefully crafted storytelling machine designed to build a very specific version of history. So, there you have it, the 4 pillars of this storytelling blueprint. You've got dynamic visuals to make it feel real and active. You've got an evocative tone to make you feel something about it. You've got clear narration so you're never lost. And you have structured graphics to organize it all. Every single piece is doing a specific job to create this powerful story of imperial glory.
Which brings us to one last really important thought. This whole blueprint, it's an incredible recipe for telling a hero's story, a story of triumph. But every story is told from a certain point of view. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If this is how you write the story for the victors, how would you write the one for the conquered? What would that blueprint look like? What colors, what music, what kind of visuals would you use to tell their side of history? Definitely something to think about.